to order the House Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce. It is 2 p.m. and we're in room 329. My name is Jackson Sayama, and I'll be the acting chair of this committee while Chair Nakashima is away. We'll have Representative Onishi acting as vice chair. For now, I'd like to welcome all the members here to testify and all members of this committee. We're looking forward to a productive session with you all. Now, before we move into the agenda, I'd like to go over some housekeeping. In order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify after your testimony is complete for those who are on Zoom. Zoom functions will allow you to chat with the technical staff if you need technical help. If you're disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you will be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. Please avoid using trademarks or copyright images, and for everyone here, please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. All right, with that, we will be moving on to the first item. HB 498 relating to the counties authorizes counties after adoption of an ordinance to sell private property after all notices, orders, and appeal proceedings are exhausted and to use those revenues to pay unpaid civil fines. We have, doesn't look like we have anyone to testify in person or on Zoom. We have supportive testimony from Councilmember Calvin Say. We have supportive testimony from Department of Planning and Permitting and one individual in opposition. I guess there is no one to ask questions to, so we'll be moving on to the second item, HB 525, relating to the Uniform Commercial Code, implements amendments to the Uniform Commercial Code set forth by the Uniform Law Commission. We have Peter Hamaski from the Commission to Promote Uniform Legislation on Zoom. Peter, are you there?
He's present.
Yeah, go ahead. Is he there?
Yeah, he's there.
Okay.
To hear you too.
Okay, well, if he's having technical issues, maybe we'll come back to him once he's able to fix that problem. Okay, members, we'll be moving on to HB 75 relating to motor vehicle insurance. This increases in tiers the minimum amount of liability insurance coverage required for motor vehicle insurance policies. To testify, we have Gordon Ito, the insurance commissioner from the state of Hawaii DCCA, with comments. Please go. Oh.
Yes, hi. I'm not Gordon, but my name is Kathleen Nakasone, representing the department today, and we just stand on our testimony, offering comments, and we are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Allison Ueoka from the Hawaii Insurance Council in person.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Allison Ueoka, Hawaii Insurance Council. I wanted to comment that any increase in minimum liability limits is regressive and may increase costs for other liability coverages as well, namely uninsured and uninsured motorist coverage. If the legislature, however, decides to increase minimum coverages, we're asking for an amendment that has to do with the industry's ability to appropriately charge for coverages. Hawaii has a very strict prior approval rate law, which means no insurer may charge a rate before it's approved prior to its use. We've provided language that mandates the insurance commissioner to call for a filing by the industry and a timeline to approve rates prior to the law becoming effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Evan Owe from Hawaii Association for Justice with comments.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Evan Oe on behalf of the Hawaii Association for Justice. We stand in strong support of this measure, which seeks to increase the motor vehicle insurance minimums to more accurately reflect the rising cost of living and medical expenses associated with motor vehicle accidents. Motor vehicle insurance minimums haven't been addressed in over 25 years, resulting in a 50% reduction in consumer protection. As stated, the current low minimums are inconsistent with the substantial rise in medical inflation. For example, medical bills for accidents of moderate severity routinely exceed $20,000, and those with trauma often exceed $50,000. Furthermore, Hawaii has been one of the nation's most profitable states for automobile insurance for over 25 years. According to the National Insurance Commissioners, Hawaii has nearly doubled the national average in underwriting profit and national average of return in net worth. Ultimately, this is a consumer protection issue as accident victims and healthcare providers pay the price for Hawaii's unreasonably low minimum policies. With this in mind, thank you for the opportunity to testify on this measure. We'll be available for any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Annie Macapagal from the American Property Casualty Insurance Association.
Yeah. Aloha, Annie Macapagal on behalf of the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. We are respectfully submitting testimony in opposition to this measure, just echoing the sentiments of my colleague Allison Ueoka from HIC, and we just want to urge the legislature to view the unintended adverse impact of forcing the financial challenge to pay what will likely be increased rates, and worse yet, just not only insurance rates, but we also are facing across the board in Hawaii the rising cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Matt Tsujimura from State Farm.
Afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Matt Tsujimura on behalf of State Farm Insurance. You have our written testimony in opposition, so I'll stand on that, but I do want to just point out that at the heart of this is the issue between coverage and affordability. Raising insurance minimums can have the inadvertent consequence of putting those who can least afford it into a situation where they're going to have to decide whether to pay for the higher premiums for insurance or chance driving without it. And that can incur a lot of additional costs on top of that, whether that's uninsured, underinsured premiums, as well as other additional costs. So just want to put that at the forefront, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tim Dayton from Geico. If he's not here, we'll be moving on to I'm sorry, that's all we have for in-person testimony. Are there any other members here from the public testifying on NHB 75? Go ahead.
Apologies. My name is Ann Chung. I represent the Hawaii State Chiropractors Association.
Oh, sorry, we're not
Bill.
there yet.
I'm sorry.
Okay, members, any questions? Go ahead.
I want to first call up the person representing the insurance commissioner.
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, thank you for coming. Sorry, I forgot your name.
Kathleen Nakasone.
Kathleen. So,
Nakasone.
do you folks have any statistics on the number of uninsured motorists?
We actually do. I don't have it with me. I don't have it with me, but I think we can get that for you.
Okay, yeah, we would really appreciate that.
Okay.
So this bill increasing the limits, do you think it would have put pressure on increasing the number of potential uninsured motorists?
Oh, I don't think it'll, well, you mean to the extent that it becomes unaffordable?
Well, to the extent that it increases insurance costs.
Well, yeah, the division did a preliminary review on the rate filings that we did have in our office, and it is definitely an upward pressure on
Rates.
the definite upward pressure. And so, so there's that. And so as to whether or not it would cause some people to then not purchase insurance, I think that's always a risk.
Okay,
Always a
thank
risk.
you. Chair, if I
Go
might
ahead.
ask Mr. Oy for follow-up.
Yeah.
Aloha, Vice Chair.
Hi. I had a question in regards to your testimony. So, I guess, were you inferring that because insurance companies have a certain percentage of profit, that they should not be able to increase rates?
No,
Therefore,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, so therefore, they can absorb this additional insurance limits.
It's never been our intention to cap the insurance company's ability to increase premiums. It's more just that there's ample room in order to allow for the increases in coverage minimums at that point.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't quite understand it. But, okay, so in regards to your associations, the Association for Justice, if it increases the number of uninsured motorists, how does that justice for those that are in an accident with an uninsured motorist if they're not getting the insurance because the premiums are too high?
Thank you for the question. I think our main goal with this measure is to really ensure that victims are in fact compensated for their injuries in the event of a motor vehicle accident. And from my understanding, the minimums are required by law, and we can't dictate as to whether individual elects to purchase these minimums or not. But we just would like to make sure there's adequate provisions in there to protect Hawaii residents who are in these accidents.
Yeah, but there is a correlation, right, with uninsured motorists impacting insured motorists if they're in an accident together,
Correct, yeah,
right?
right.
Okay. And can I have one more follow-up?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Allison, Uyuka? I had a question in regards to, wait, what was that? Sorry. Sorry, Allison, I forgot.
That's okay. I can answer the uninsured motorist question, though, if you want me to answer
Oh,
that.
sure.
The Insurance
Continue.
Research Council in 2019, that's the most recent data. Hawaii uninsured motorist rate is about 9%. National average is about 12. So we're under the national average. I would say that it's directly related to the price. So as price goes up, as it gets more and more unaffordable,
Okay.
the uninsured motorist gets more
Yeah, good.
larger.
Okay, I remember my question.
Yes,
So, insured motorists can buy additional insurance to cover uninsured motorists, correct?
correct.
So, would you think that that insurance rate or insurance policies would also increase if it increases the number of uninsured motorists in Hawaii?
Yes,
So that would affect the guys who are buying insurance right now, or that uninsured motorist insurance?
yes. So it's quite complex the way auto insurance works, but if you get injured in an accident, it comes off your own PIP first, then it goes to the at-fault's BI, and it comes back to your UM or UIM. If there's no BI, that guy's uninsured, comes off of your uninsured motorist coverage if you bought it. If you didn't, then there is none. So as BI increases, that puts pressure on uninsured and underinsured motorist coverages, all of the liability coverages.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the consideration.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, we'll be moving on to HB 76. This is relating to motor vehicle insurance, increases the minimum amount of liability insurance coverage required for motor vehicle insurance policies. First, we have Insurance Commissioner Gordon Ito from DCCA.
All right, the department stands on its testimony, offering comments.
Thank you. Next, we have Allison Ueoka from Hawaii Insurance Council.
We'll stand on our testimony with comments.
Thank you. Next, Evan Owit from Hawaii Association for Justice.
Evan Oe on behalf of Hawaii Association for Justice, we stand on our written installments.
Matt Sujimura from State Farm.
We'll stand on our written testimony.
And Tim Dayton from Geico. Still not here? Okay. Members, any questions? Not? We'll be moving on to HB 638. Relating to insurance, authorizes prescriptions made by chiropractors for physical therapy and therapeutic massage treatments to qualify as a motor vehicle insurance personal injury protection benefit. Replaces the existing cap on the number of chiropractic treatment visits that qualify for motor vehicle insurance coverage with a number of visits that are deemed medically necessary. Amends the reimbursement amount for chiropractic treatments from $75 per visit to an amount tied to the charges and any subsequent increases in charges permissible under the Workers' Compensation Supplemental Medical Fee Schedule. Repeals the 30-visit cap on combined naturopathic, chiropractic, and acupuncture treatments. Here to testify first, Gordon Ito from DCCA.
So I believe you have our written testimony, so we do stand on that offering comment, so I don't think I'm going to bother you with reading it, but we are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Allison Ueoka, Hawaii Insurers Council.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Allison for Hawaii Insurers Council. We oppose this bill. This bill does three things that will increase the cost of motor vehicle insurance. First, it lifts the cap on per visit costs to an unknown amount that is easily manipulated in the workers' comp medical fee schedule. Number two, it lifts the cap on utilization, which invites abuse. And three, allows referrals to providers outside their license, which also invites abuse. These provisions could allow chiropractic charges to easily eat up PIP benefits and to reach the tort threshold, which we believe will increase the overall cost to motor vehicle insurance without measurable benefit. Finally, we believe increasing costs for motor vehicle insurance at a time of high inflation, supply chain cost increases, higher labor costs, and higher costs of motor vehicle physical damage is not ideal. We ask that this bill be held. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Dean Shivers from the Hawaii State Chiropractic Association on Zoom.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd like to just add that Hawaii now has the lowest compensation in the nation and the highest cost of living. And this bill would help to close that gap and encourage more chiropractors to treat personal injury patients. Also, it's very, very difficult for personal injury patients, especially in our neighbor islands, to find a doctor who will treat them. And lastly, the ability to refer to acupuncture and physical therapy and massage, we believe will improve the care of the patients. And thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next, we have Annie McPagal from the American Property Casualty Insurance Association.
Aloha again, Annie McCapagal on behalf of APCIA. We echo the sentiments of the previous testifiers concerned with the rising costs. And we just also question some of the language used in the measure that seems to equate chiropractors as medical doctors. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next, we have Ann Chung from the Hawaii State Chiropractic Association.
Aloha, Ann Chung. Sorry about the other bill. I stand on my written testimony, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Matt Sujimura from State Farm.
Thank you, Chair. Matt Sujimura on behalf of State Farm. We'll stand on our written testimony in opposition, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, Tim Dayton from Geico. Okay, not here. Next, we have Allison King on Zoom. Okay. Finally, Mark Rocco in support. You're not here in person? Okay. Members, any questions?
Excuse me, sorry, can I just correct the record? I apologize. I should, just
Sorry,
for the
for the record, state your name, please.
Yeah, Kathleen Nakasone for Gordon Ito, Insurance Commissioner, DCCA. The division does oppose the bill, so I had previously said we just offered comments, but the division does oppose the bill. Thank you.
Okay. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to the next item. Moving on to HB 537 relating to electronic smoking devices. This establishes a tax equal to 70% of the manufacturer's list price for electronic smoking devices and e-liquid products. Expands the electronic smoking device retailer registration unit to include wholesalers. Requires electronic cigarette wholesalers to register with the electronic smoking device retailer and wholesaler registration unit. First to testify, we have Gary Suganuma from the Department of Taxation.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Kathy Nee, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the Department of Taxation. The department does stand on its written testimony in regards to this bill. Respectfully, we would like to point out that the department appreciates the intent of the measure, but we respectfully refer to HB 1077 as far as the definitions and content. I will be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kenneth Fink from Department of Health.
Good afternoon. I'm Lola Irvin, representing Dr. Kenneth Fink from the Department of Health. And forgive me while I adjust contraptions on my face. Okay. So I'm Lola Irvin. I'm representing Dr. Kenny Fink. And this is actually, I think, the 9th year that the Department of Health stands before you asking for electronic smoking devices or e-cigarettes to be regulated. So we really do appreciate HB 537 and its intent. Like the Department of Taxation, we do refer to HB 1077, which was developed in terms of definitions, content, and structure between the Department of Taxation, the Attorney General's Office, and the Department of Health. For public health, increasing the price of electronic cigarettes is a public health approach. We know that youth are most sensitive to the price of cigarettes, and likewise would be for e-cigarettes. The 70% increase that you'll see in HB 1077 would then make the tax structure equal to other tobacco products. And so what HB 1077 would do, and I think that was the intent of HB 537, would be to create parity, equality between the way we treat cigarettes and other tobacco products by including e-cigarettes in the definition of tobacco products. Because right now you can purchase these online, but you can't purchase cigarettes online. And so this would then create that equality so that youth could not purchase it online. It would also then increase the price, because all we have right now is general excise tax. Whereas with cigarettes, right, we do have an additional tax. And so I think the approach of HB 537 was to increase that price. We do recommend the structure and the definitions you'll find in HB 1077. So thank you so much for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you. Next, we have Richard Stacy from the Attorney General's Office.
Aloha, Acting Chair Sayama, Acting Vice Chair Onishi, members of the committee. My name is Rich Stacy. I'm a Deputy Attorney General, and I do work in a unit that deals with tobacco enforcement, also electronic smoking device retail registration. We did submit late testimony. I have copies if you don't have it. Like the prior two testifiers, we are suggesting that the HB 1077 wording would work better, especially given, rather than a new tax chapter, it would put it within 245, which everyone testifying so far deals with already. We do strongly support the fair taxation and enforcement of vaping. As Lola Irvin said, we've been doing this for many years, and Hawaii has a huge problem, and this would help address it. So we did suggest wording similar to HB 1077. Janine Udui is also here, another Deputy Attorney General who represents Department of Taxation. So if the committee does not go the way we suggest and this moves forward as is, then there's edits suggested that would, we think, be slightly better wording, and that's included in our testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Liza Gill from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids Hawaii.
Members of the committee, Liza Ryan Gill with Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. We actually just submitted comments on this bill, and I think we'd also like to point to HB 1077. We're here for any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We've submitted written testimony. We'll stand on our comments and we'll be available for questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Guy Bentley from the Reasons Foundation on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify before you today. When we're considering the issue of e-cigarette taxes, it should be noted that the Food and Drug Administration recognizes that there is a risk continuum when it comes to tobacco products, with cigarettes being the most dangerous tobacco products and alternatives like e-cigarettes being far less dangerous. As such, when the FDA authorizes a new product like an e-cigarette, each one has to be evaluated as to whether they are, quote, appropriate for the protection of public health, unquote. And what that means is that the product has to provide a net benefit to public health. And in 2021, the FDA authorized an e-cigarette as appropriate for the protection of public health for the first time, and has since authorized several more. So just to be clear, HB 537 would impose a very large tax on products that the FDA has evaluated and authorized as being an actual net benefit to public health. And the main reason being is that e-cigarettes are substitutes, not complements to traditional tobacco products, especially if smokers switch entirely from cigarettes to e-cigarettes. According to modeling from the world's leading expert on e-cigarette taxes, Georgia State University's Michael Pesco, the federal e-cigarette tax that was attempting to create parity between combustible cigarettes and e-cigarettes, much like HB 537, that would have created an extra 2.5 million smokers nationwide and 500,000 more young smokers. I'm sure he'd be very happy to speak to the committee about his research. So an overwhelming majority of the literature on this shows that higher taxes on e-cigarettes do incentivize smoking traditional cigarettes and deter people from switching away from safer alternatives. You have my written testimony, happy to answer any questions, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Don Weissman from the American Heart Association on Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Acting Chair Sayama. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm representing the American Heart Association. We, like the Department of Health, Department of Taxation, and the Attorney General's Office, support the intent of this bill, but which I think is to create parity with traditional tobacco products and eliminate the attraction of a lower cost product to kids. However, I want to make clear that safer and safe are two different, entirely two different things. There is no safe tobacco product. And there's a growing body of evidence indicating that e-cigarettes are at least as dangerous from a cardiovascular standpoint. And I'll point out that cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of death and major disability in our state, and a major cause of healthcare costs. But it's becoming more and more clear that e-cigarettes cause at least the same impact as traditional cigarettes, and could potentially be even more harmful to cardiovascular health. And so, I think we need to address this issue. We need to make it less attractive to people, and the only way to do that is to create parity with the higher cigarette taxes that exist, or tobacco taxes that exist for traditional tobacco products, and make it much less attractive to our keiki. I appreciate your attention to this, and I hope that you will look at HB 1077 or HB 833, which is more comprehensive and would address not only the taxes, but the licensing requirements for those who sell e-cigarettes, which would make it easier to enforce a tax law. With that, I'll leave it for you for any questions, but I appreciate the time. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next, we have Scott Rasek from the Volcano Vape Shops on Zoom.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. My name is Scott Rasek. I operate a local chain of retail businesses and a distribution company called Volcano Vape Shops. We have 17 vape shops and a distribution center across the state and employ roughly 100 people. The company was founded in 2009 by two local entrepreneurs. We stand on our testimony in opposition of HB 537, as it would impose unintended consequences for Hawaii businesses. HB 537 is unclear in its identifications of a dealer and wholesaler, in which the current marketplace bears no relevance to the supply chain. Currently, there are many forms of importation and sale of vaping products in Hawaii, but the largest disconnect for this bill negates the retailers who source direct from mainland suppliers or direct from international factory sources, which makes up a large percentage of the marketplace. This is impossible to track and enforce from the state level. With largely fragmented supply chain industry-wide, this would ensure locally based wholesale distributors are at a huge disadvantage. This bill would impose a tax only for local Hawaii-based business distributors and wholesalers, making a huge disadvantages for those businesses who bear large additional costs of a massive tax burden, likely closing many doors for businesses and leading to an industry-wide collapse. Currently, HB 537 aims to tax vaping products at a rate of 70%, which the bill justifies as parity with tobacco. The issue is vape items come at a significantly higher cost value than cigarettes, and thus parity percentage tax makes the pricing structure not feasible for both businesses and consumers. This in turn opens up a giant black market event. For these reasons and more, we strongly urge you to oppose this bill, protect the current local businesses whose employees and jobs depend on the viability of the Hawaii vape market. I'm here for any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next, we have Stephen Greenhut from R Street Institute.
Yes, thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. I'm the Western Region Director for the R Street Institute. We're a free market think tank, and we do extensive work in tobacco harm reduction. We oppose the legislation. We fear that raising taxes on vaping will discourage people who smoke from switching to a less dangerous product. I submitted testimony, but wanted to point out, Britain's top public health agency, Public Health England, finds that vaping is 95% less harmful than smoking combustible cigarettes. No one's saying it's all safe, but it's safer, and that's a big difference. Raising e-cigarette prices via tax rates serves only to make more dangerous cigarette smoking a likely alternative. Pricing is a top determinant in one's decision about which product to buy, especially among teens who shouldn't be buying it anyway. To deal with underage vapors, states should strictly enforce age 21 laws. So I'm just respectfully asking Hawaii lawmakers to recognize that e-cigarettes provide a promising off-ramp for nicotine-addicted combustible cigarette users, and overtaxing e-cigarettes will not reduce nicotine addiction. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Valerie Chang from the Hawaii COPD Coalition on Zoom.
Hi, this is Valerie Chang with the Hawaii COPD Coalition. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify. We already have over 45,000 Hawaii residents that are COPD patients that have enough trouble breathing, and we really don't want any more, and that's why we strongly support the intent of this bill 537, but we do encourage this committee to please consider amending it to incorporate the language in HB 833 or HB 1077 so that we have a comprehensive approach to tax tobacco and nicotine products, because our youth are currently having a terrible, terrible epidemic, and it's affecting 1 in 3 kids in high school and 1 in 5 kids in middle school, and we really need to do something. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Peggy Mirza from the Hawaii Public Health Institute.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Peggy Mirza with Hawaii Public Health Institute. Thanks for the opportunity to testify on HB 537. Just like many of the previous testifiers, we too feel that the language in 1077 or HB 833 will be helpful in implementing the law because of the way it brings Chapter 245 and the existing definitions in. This taxation is a part of a comprehensive regulation for cigarettes, and the same policies need to be applied to e-cigarettes because they too are tobacco products. And I'd like to point out that many states are already taxing these products as tobacco products as well. Hawaii voters feel the same way. In November 2022, in a poll of registered voters conducted by Ward Research, 73% of respondents said that they believe vaping devices and e-cigarettes are tobacco products, and 91% stated vaping devices and e-cigarettes should be regulated as tobacco products. In 2021, one of the top tobacco companies spent $8.6 billion, that's $1 million every hour, to market cigarettes and smokeless tobacco products. The products are heavily targeted at children, promising exciting and tantalizing fruit flavors, while also being visually appealing, decorated with trendy colors and familiar cartoon images. Currently, our keiki can easily obtain these products because we lack comprehensive regulation. It's vital for the health of our children and communities to quickly and comprehensively regulate these products. And so thank you so much for considering our testimony, and we'll be here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Members, we have a number of written testimony in support as well as in opposition. But noting that, members, do you have any questions for the testifiers today? Okay, seeing none, we'll be moving on to the next item in the agenda, HB 647, relating to alcohol. Expands the definition of beer under the state's liquor tax and liquor regulatory laws to specify that the term includes an alcohol by volume of no less than 0.5% and alcohol seltzer beverages, but excludes certain other forms of distillation. Okay, first to testify, we have Gary Suganuma from the Department of Taxation.
Chair, the department stands on this.
Thank you. Next, we have Rochelle Araki from the DCCA. Okay, no. Next, we have Steve Hasmasheld from Lanikai Brewing Company on Zoom. Okay. Next, we have Thomas Kearns from Big Island Brewhouse on Zoom. Thomas Kearns, go ahead. Okay, while we wait for him, we also have written testimony in support from Maui Brewing Company and individual in opposition. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, if Mr. Thomas Kearns gets back online, we'll come back to him later. But in the meantime, we'll be moving on to HB 660, relating to the issuance of special purpose revenue bonds for not-for-profit corporations that provide healthcare facilities to the general public. This authorizes the issuance of special purpose revenue bonds to assist Hawaii Pacific Health. First to testify, we have Luis Salvera from the Department of Budget and Finance. Okay. Next, we have Michael Robinson from Hawaii Pacific Health.
Good afternoon, Acting Chair, Vice Chair. Mike Robinson with Hawaii Pacific Health, testifying in strong support of HB 660. We're in the process of a 15-year master plan redevelopment of Straub Medical Center on the corner of King and Ward. The last time that facility's been renovated was in 1970. So we're really excited to begin this journey. This spur would be to accomplish building a parking facility, which is going to be the first step, and then planning and design for phase 2. We at this point do not plan on adding any additional beds. The purpose of this rebuild is to create a healthcare facility that facilitates both outpatient treatment as well as flexible clinic space. And so thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we also have one more written testimony in support. Members, do you have any questions? Go ahead.
This question is for Michael Robinson. So the question is, the money you would get, is this from the sale of state bonds and then?
No, this would be debt that we are issuing. So it has no effect on the borrowing capacity of the state. We just need, in order for us to get preferential financial terms, we actually need to go through this process to have the project deemed for use as a public good and as a nonprofit healthcare facility. That's why we're applying.
Well, thank you. If the bill was passed, where would the funds come from for this project?
If the bill is passed, it'll come from the debt that we're issuing. So it would be from our private issuance as well as capital that we have from our own savings within our organization.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to HB 642 relating to consumer protection. This requires check cashers to report suspected financial exploitation of elders and vulnerable adults in relation to check cashing. Provides immunity for good faith reporting, authorizes a check casher to refuse to cash a check in situations of suspected financial exploitation. First to testify, we have Iris Ikeda from DCCA.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Iris Ikeda. I'm the Commissioner for the Financial Institutions of DCCA. And so we generally defer to the Office of Consumer Protection, and we are limiting our comments to Section 3 on page 6, relating to the exemption of the current exemptions in 480F HRS. So just as a background, banks are heavily regulated by many laws and regulations, and these provisions seem to be duplicative of the review that may be covered during an exam or during our ongoing supervision. And I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Mana Moriarty from DCCA Office of Consumer Protection.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The Office of Consumer Protection offered comments on this bill. As you know from my colleague Ms. Ikeda's testimony, financial institutions already have mandatory reporting requirements in place. And it's my understanding that last session, additional mandatory reporting requirements were enacted for investment brokers regulated under Chapter 485A. At this point, it's unclear whether the mandatory reportings are going to lead to actual reductions in instances of elder abuse. And that's all I have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we also have supportive testimony from two individuals. With that, members, any questions? Yes. Go ahead.
Is anybody in support here to testify so I can ask them a question?
No members in support.
All right, never mind.
Person. Okay. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Maybe. For Iris, if you could please come up. Hi, Iris. So, as far as financial institutions, are they required to have a policy about like in regards to elder abuse and elder fraud in regards to their operations? Is it required of them?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the our banks are there's a financial fraud or financial abuse statute both in state law and in federal law that we examine for, and they do reporting to us on a regular basis if there's financial fraud going on or financial abuse going on, which is different than financial exploitation. Financial exploitation is just a subset of financial abuse.
So many of the financial institutions have the ability through their policies to already determine whether or not to cash a check if they suspect fraud or elder abuse.
Right. So it would be not just cashing checks, but any transaction on any account holder.
Withdrawals from savings accounts,
Right.
etc.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I just have one follow-up, actually. So how would you define the difference between the exploitation and fraud, as you noted?
Yeah, so let me pull up the definition that we use. Sorry, actually, I don't have it. So financial exploitation is just sort of the appearance of some abuse going on. Financial abuse is more than that, right? So it'd be embezzlement, it would be, someone coming, the most typical thing is, grandchild coming with grandma to the bank and saying, "Grandma, cash this check, don't forget, I have to tell her, give me all the money." That sort of thing, which is more than just financial exploitation. Bank tellers, we train our bank tellers to look for different types of abuse, and it could be pretty subtle in the way that it happens, which is why we provide a lot of training.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Members, any other questions? If not, we'll be moving on to HB 643. This is relating to deceptive trade practices, establishes that charging shipping and delivering charges that exceed the actual cost charged to the seller to ship or deliver a commodity to a consumer in Hawaii constitutes an unfair and deceptive practice. First to testify, we have Madam Moriarty from DCCA.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair and members. The Office of Consumer Protection supports this bill. The ability of merchants to profit off our residents' geographical isolation may amount to a deceptive practice, so we respectfully stand in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tina Yamaki from the Retail Merchants of Hawaii.
Aloha and good afternoon. I'm Tina Yamaki with the Retail Merchants of Hawaii, and I just want to say I'm so sorry. I FUBAR'd on House Bill 537 regarding electronic smoking. My testimony kind of got mixed up. I had some technical difficulties, but we are opposed to that bill. With regards to deceptive trade practices, this is another bill that we're very much opposed to. What we found out during the pandemic is a lot of people were shopping online and getting things shipped to their homes. And now we're finding out that people no longer want 2 to 3 day shipping. They want it the next day. They want it within hours. They want it faster. And sometimes it's a little harder to do for Hawaii. And we've seen them changing the ways that they are shopping. They're doing a lot more research online. They are looking for free shipping and what the costs are. A lot of times too, when checking out the price of the shipping, tax, handling fee, if anything is shown, and the customer will ultimately have that opportunity to decide, are they going to accept the charges and pay for it, or are they going to go to another site and buy the same items from somebody else. In many cases, shipping is more expensive to Hawaii. We cannot do ground shipping, obviously, because we are an island state and we can't drive over water. And also, too, on the mainland, they also have rail and other ways of getting these products across the state and to those people who are ordering them. a lot of our sellers have online third-party shippers where they may have the products and somebody else ships it. So it's not only the shipping cost to and from, but it also costs is the packing materials and the people who are packing it. So that's part of it too. The other thing I want to point out is this is going to actually open up a lot of contracts with people who have, or companies that have third-party shippers, and a lot of the contracts are proprietary information. They don't want to have their competitors know what they're selling or what their contract says. For these reasons, we are very concerned about this mandate. It may also have where national and international online sellers no longer want to sell to Hawaii anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Okay. We'll be moving on then. We'll move on to HB 351 relating to tax credits. Establishes a tax credit for certain owners of a condominium whose association is increasing maintenance fees to comply with a county ordinance requiring an automatic fire sprinkler system or alternative fire prevention and fire safety system. First to testify, we have Gary Suganuma from Department of Taxation.
Hello again, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. The department stands on behalf, my name is Kathy Nee, introducing myself again, representing the department. The department stands on its written testimony. Just in case anybody, the testimony wasn't submitted, we just want to go over that we do have a few notes that we would like you to take into consideration. First, noting that aggregate caps are difficult for the department to administer. And so just to prevent any kind of uncertainty for taxpayers, we strongly suggest that if the aggregate cap is maintained, that the department requests that the credits be certified by another agency. Second, also the department also suggests certain things be clarified in the bill. One, that only one tax credit may be claimed per unit, and also that the credit may be claimed in the taxable year in which the increase in fee was imposed and paid. And number three, that the amount of the credit claimed shall not exceed the amount by which the maintenance fee was increased or the amount actually paid by the taxpayer. Other notes on here are just clarifying language that we hope you would take into consideration. I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Yuriko Jane Sugimura from the Hawaii Council for Association of Apartment Owners on Zoom.
I'm here.
Oh, hi.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Sayama and members of the committee. My name is Jane Sugimura. I'm president of the Hawaii Council of Association of Apartment Owners. HCCA supports the intent and purpose of this bill because the unfunded county mandate requiring fire sprinklers to be installed in high-rise residential buildings has created concern and hardship for unit owners who are currently already facing financial challenges to maintain their aging buildings. But I have some questions. And you know, the tax credit is $1,000 per unit, and you need clarification: is that a one-time tax credit or is it annual? Mainly because my building in 2021, when the county ordinance in Oahu was passed in 2019, and the estimate for my 23-story building, 300 units, was $3.5 to $4 million for fire sprinklers. For 300 units, that's $13,000 per unit. So if it's only a one-time credit, it doesn't help very much. And so we need clarification in this bill as to whether it's an annual, one-time credit, or is it an annual credit? Because in order to offset the amount of the costs of installing the sprinklers, they need to be able to deduct, use the credit for 13 years to take care of that credit. Also, the bill talks about aggregate amount of tax credit claimed. That needs clarification too, because it only says that the maximum aggregate can be $5 million for each taxable year. And if the maximum amount is $1,000, that means only 5,000 taxpayers can claim the credit. In Oahu, we know that there are over 100,000 unit owners who live in these high-rise buildings that would be eligible. And so does that mean that the first 5,000 get the tax credit And, so how do you work that? So I think that provision needs to be clarified. Also, the bill talks about the tax credit would only apply if the maintenance fee were increased. In condominiums with this type of an unfunded mandate, because we have a contractor who has to be paid to install this equipment, they want to get paid right away. And so usually what happens, and because the condominiums don't have the money in their reserves, because the bill was only passed in 2019, what happens is it's a special assessment. It's not maintenance fees. So that portion of the bill's got to change, so it would have to include maintenance fees or assessments, or special assessments.
Ms. Sugimura, you have exceeded the 2-minute. Would you like to wrap up?
Yes, and I urge the committee to work on this, because this would be very helpful to new homeowners who buy into condominiums who don't have a whole lot of extra money, and for those who live on, who have fixed incomes, who don't have $13,000, $15,000 sitting around in a bank account, to pay for these unfunded mandates that are imposed by the government. And so I really urge you to look at this bill and clarify the matters that I've pointed out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii on Zoom. Hold on, Tom. I think there's some kind of audio issue on your end.
No,
it's very, very, very high pitch.
Just keep him.
No. I think something's wrong with your mic.
No, there's nothing wrong.
Nope, definitely still there. Yeah, it's very squealy.
He has a noise filter on.
Our tech support is saying you have a noise filter on? Or voice filter on? Well, Tom, we appreciate the entertainment, but we do have your written testimony, so we will be referencing that for this measure, if that's all right. Members, we also have other written testimony in support with one individual with comments. Members, do you have any questions? Rep. Tam?
Tax Department, please.
Yes.
So
Hello.
based off of Ms. Sugimura's testimony about switching this to a special assessment and doing it on an annual basis, or monthly basis, could the tax department be able to accommodate that?
We can take that into consideration. That is one of the points that we put in the in our written testimony. But so we did. We are aware of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Members, other questions? Okay. If not, we'll be moving on then to HB 377. This is relating to condominium proxy voting. Removes from the standard condominium proxy form the option of giving a proxy vote to the board of directors of a condominium association as a whole. Removes the authority of a board to use association funds to solicit proxies as a part of distribution of proxies. First to testify, we have Steve Gladstein, Hawaii State Associations of Parliamentarians, on Zoom.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Sayama, and committee members. My name is Steve Gladstein, and I'm testifying as the chair of the Hawaii State Association of Parliamentarians Legislative Committee. I recognize the importance of everybody's time, so I'm just going to highlight some parts of my testimony rather than reading the entire 4 pages. Okay, basically, the current status is a balanced method for condominium associations where they're using association funds to solicit proxies for voting, whether it's elections or for other purposes, and even in some cases amendments to their documents. When the association funds are required to be used, there is a mandatory posting, and owners have equal opportunity to solicit. There are some boards have gone beyond that opportunity to make sure that non-resident owners have the opportunity and statements are allowed, as well as even the proxy form can have names of individuals if they so choose, if the board so chooses. This has been around for a while, and the proposed bill has been rejected numerous times in your legislature. It was rejected last year in 2022. It was rejected in 2021. It was further rejected before then, and as you can see, there's previous in 2019. The genesis of the board majority is not understood by a lot of people. Before 1984, there was no board majority. So what happened was we had a situation where association presidents were getting lots of proxies controlled the meeting. And over the years, the legislature has responded to people and responded even to much testimony from many of us, which has allowed for this balanced approach. It was reviewed by the stakeholders and the recodification report that actually was the genesis of Chapter 514D. This has worked out well. When you take a look, there's really no need to really eliminate the board majority box on the proxy form. I've worked through over 100 meetings last year and expect to be involved with about 60 to 70 personally in the next couple of months. And the problem is not that boards are so powerful. The problem seems to be we can't find board members to serve. We have board members getting individually sued by a small minority of people. And I think this is something that there's really no need to replace an owner's choice. If an owner
Mr.
chooses
Glassstein,
to...
your 2-minute time limit is up. Would you like to wrap up?
Yeah, I'll just wrap up, sir. The owner's choice is there, and I just don't believe we should replace that owner's choice absent a compelling legislative interest. Thank you very much for the chance to testify.
Thank you. Next, we have Yuriko Jane Sugimura from the Hawaii Council of Associations of Apartment Owners.
Yes. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Sayama, members of the committee. HCA opposes House Bill 377. We join in the comments of Steve Glanstein in opposition to this bill. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you. Next, we have Greg Misakian from Kokua Council on Zoom.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Greg Misakian, and I am the second Vice President of the Kokua Council and a board member of the Waikiki Neighborhood Board. I am in support of HB 377. I have firsthand experience at my condominium association in Hawaii, where there is a serious abuse of proxies and proxy solicitation by directors on the board. It is done to retain power and control, and my experience is shared by many owners and associations throughout Hawaii. If any owner trusts a member or a director on the board, they can assign their proxy to that member or board member. I do not agree with the use of proxies for elections, but if they are to be used, the process needs to be fair and balanced. I respectfully ask you to disregard the testimony opposing HB 377 from those who represent or are affiliated with the condominium and HOA trade industry and who may benefit financially when there is conflict within associations. This includes parliamentarians and attorneys, in addition to those that are testifying on behalf of boards and associations, which includes management company representatives, association general managers, resident managers, and site managers. And lastly, the numerous cut and paste boilerplate testimonies submitted that appear to be directed by an attorney. I will ask you to focus on the testimony from individuals and homeowners who are most impacted by this bill. I also want to share two concerns. The first is that testimony that was published this morning does not appear in the chronological order it was submitted, with much of the opposition testimony coming first. The second, I have also been told that numerous testimonies in support of H 377 are not included in today's published testimony. Both raise concerns about fairness and transparency. Fair elections are expected by all Hawaii residents, and no abuse of the election process should ever be allowed. I ask the committee and legislators to support HB 377, and I ask you to look at HB 176 and its companion bill SB 1202. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next, we have Lila Maurer from Hui Oi Ayo on Zoom.
Aloha. Chair Nakashima, Vice Chair Sayama, and members of the committee, today's Groundhog Day, and like the movie, I feel like I've been testifying for this measure many, many times before, and I'll continue to do so until we condo owners are able to have fair, unbiased, untainted, and honest elections. I support House Bill 377. If you look at the Legislative Reference Bureau, you'll see that there are studies dating as far back as the 80s regarding confusion about proxy assignments. How many decades are we going to continue this discussion? While the use of proxies may lead owners to feel that they're represented and that they have free choice, the more removed a voter is from the actual casting of his vote, the greater the possibility of interference and loss of choice. The authorized proxy forms provided by property management companies are general proxies that allow the proxy holder to vote however the holder wants, and are not directed proxies that instruct the proxy holder how to vote. I also asked the committee to look at House Bill 176, which removes the use of confusing and manipulatable proxies, provides enforcement against violation of association election rules, requires directors to certify that they'll comply with association rules and statutes. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. I'm available to answer questions.
Thank you. Next we have Jeff Sadino on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Jeff Sadino. I'm a condo owner and I strongly support this bill. When Community Associations Institute introduced voting as a whole in 1996, the Real Estate Commission warned that the, quote, amendment will provide for more abuse, end quote. Unfortunately, those warnings have become a reality, despite what the condo industry submits in testimony every year. To support this claim, I use the fact that Hawaii has more claims and payouts against board members for breaking the law than almost any other state in the country. I summarize the industry's opposition as this. Many condo owners do not live on property, and so they should give their votes to the board majority because board members always do what is best. The counterpoint is that exactly because many condo owners do not live on property, they do not know when the board, property managers, and attorneys are breaking the law. Second, the industry says that if an owner does not like how the board is running things, they should stop complaining and run an election campaign, which is rendered pointless with voting as a whole. Since participation in condo governance is too often in the single digits or even non-existent, even if a person wins all of the votes of the owners who are involved, they still lose by landslides. I know this personally from running my own election campaigns. As a whole, gives the board too much power. The past 3 decades have shown that any benefits of as a whole are far outweighed by the harm and corruption that it promotes. The judiciary has heard all of the important facts and have concluded that board malfeasance in Hawaii is out of control. Help balance the power, improve condo governance, support this bill, and get rid of voting as a whole. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you. Next we have Lords Scheibert on Zoom.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to testify before you. I stand on my written testimony and would like to add verbally the genesis of board majority based on documents that I have recovered. And in 1968, my condo documents read proxies given to the board as an entity. In 1984, Denman and Yokoyama, an ad hoc committee, prepared a report for Senator Cobb addressing a proxy format and to include proxy share to each director. In June 1994, I discovered a document online titled Board Director's Guide Proxies. On page 41, it reads the original 514A-83.2 in full text. This is after Denman and Yokohama. So I've only taken out C, Proxies may be given to the board of directors provided that the proxy form shall contain a box wherein the owner may indicate that the owner wishes the vote to be shared with each board member receiving an equal percentage. Proxy forms which are not marked shall be considered a choice by the owner that the vote be made on basis of preference of the majority of the board. In 1996, 2 amendments were created by CAI Legislative Action Committee. 2 proxies created assigns proxies to the board as a whole. The second assigns proxies to the board to be divided equally among the directors attending the meeting. The Real Estate Commission written testimony to the 1996 Senate House Committee Bill 3241, we question if the amendment will provide for more abuse on the use of proxies and whether a new set of problems will appear, such as a new type of proxies and or more challenges to the proxies. In my opinion, based on documents, 514A-83.2 wasn't broken. What 514A-83.2 provided, it excluded the officers, president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary from using association funds to promote themselves to proxies as a whole to the board.
Apologize for the interruption, Ms. Schreiber, but your 2-minute time limit is up. Would you please?
Okay, I'll wrap this up.
Thank you.
That these positions would have to campaign for owners' proxies like any other owner seeking re-election or new elections. 27 years later, fast forward today, what did we get adding proxy as a ball to the board to the whole? Our condos are in disrepair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Paul Ireland Koftenau on Zoom.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Ireland Koftenau. I'm a unit owner of a condominium here in Hawaii. I'm also an attorney who works with condominium associations in Hawaii. I want to highlight the fact that I'm a satisfied condominium owner, and I often do check the box to allow to appoint or have the my proxy be to the board as a whole. And I'm pretty satisfied with my board. I think this option is good for unit owners. I also think that because it's not forced, it really doesn't allow for the opportunity for abuse. This is an option for each individual unit owner to voluntarily choose. And if a unit owner does not like the option of giving it to the proxy to the board as a whole, they don't have to. They can solicit proxies or write in a different name to appoint someone else as their proxy, or they can attend the meeting and vote themselves. So overall, I oppose this measure because it will effectively disenfranchise the majority of unit owners who are satisfied with their board. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, there are additional 7 written testimonies in support and another 20 written testimonies in opposition. Members, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure for who. I guess maybe we'll start with was it Steve Glanstein, the first testifier? The parliament, sorry, I don't know my testimony. The parliamentarian group. Are you still on Zoom?
Yes, ma'am, I still am.
I just want to clarify, is the proposal that by not allowing proxy votes, you would sort of decrease the requirements for quorum? Or would things be at a standstill because you didn't have enough people present?
Yes, we've run into that a lot where, especially for larger buildings, it's very difficult to get a quorum and they're struggling to get them. It's really not a board majority versus board equal. It's getting owners to turn in a proxy form has really been a much bigger problem for many associations.
Maybe I'll switch. Sorry, is it okay if maybe I'll switch actually to the gentleman who was from the Waikiki Neighborhood Board and on the condo association. Sorry, I'm trying to find.
Yes, I'm here. If you're asking for Greg.
Great. Yeah, I guess because it sounds like you were, part of the push behind this. Would the switch be from not allowing proxy votes to then having different quorum thresholds, or would?
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The bill is written right now is to just remove the option for proxies to give to the board as a whole. There's actually 4 boxes to check. So one is for quorum, one is for the board as a whole, another is for the directors, equal percentages to the directors present at the meeting. And then the last one, which is also going to remain, is to an individual. And a board member is an individual and a member of, the association. So anyone can give proxies based on this bill to an individual or board members. What bill intent is to just remove the option of board as a whole.
Okay, understood.
It's abused where I live, and it's a real problem. It's kept me off the board last year. I'm trying to get on this year because we have a lot of malfeasance where I live.
I guess.
So that's hopefully a good
this is like a kind of general question, but I'll pose it to you first. I'm a member of a homeowners association. I can rarely attend half the time because I'm over here in Honolulu for session and not, back home on the Big Island. The pandemic taught us all that Zoom and virtual meetings are an option, and I also think that for a lot of families who are busy with work, kids, etc., who don't want to get in their car and drive, somewhere else to go to a meeting where they have to park or, have to leave the house and not be able to monitor what's on the stove or whatever, that you would actually vastly increase participation if you allowed for virtual meetings. But most associations don't seem really eager to do that. Or management companies for that matter. So what's your thoughts on allowing for virtual participation as an option to increase participation? Because it's great to have the proxy vote option, but it would be better to have more participation of members of the association.
Absolutely, I fully support that option. We actually have our board meetings, and continue to have our board meetings through, from COVID to now, by Zoom. So all of our board meetings, our regular board meetings, are via Zoom. The only meeting that we don't have via Zoom is our annual meeting, which is on a rooftop deck. And if there's bad weather or it's windy or raining, people aren't going to go up there, especially Kapuna. So there's a lot of people off island, as we know, that own, they're on the mainland, they don't live in the building. Those people are disenfranchised. So yes, it's an excellent opportunity to bring in the technology that we currently have and use, and I'm using right now with you, to allow that. And if I could just interject one last comment, the proxies right now are emailed or faxed to the management company, yet you can't email or fax a vote for a director, and that makes no sense. We're talking about an election for people, just like you have an election for our representatives for our state. That is an issue that really needs to be addressed further, and I'm open to any questions outside of this meeting, and I can provide substantial information to support that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Rep. Tam?
I have some questions for Greg, Mr. Greg. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry.
No worries. It's Misakian. Greg Misakian.
Misakian, okay. So I understand that according to this bill, it just removes the proxy votes for the directors of the board as a whole, but not as an individual. But it also removes the authority for a board to use association fund to solicit proxies. There could be a problem in which people don't know who is on the board and who could they direct it to. And if we take away that option to solicit those proxies, it really defeats the purpose of even having that blank amount where they can choose who they want their proxies to go to. I'm all for options, and I feel like this bill might be limiting options for our condominiums owners to have that choice to choose someone on the board to make the decision on their behalf. And it feels
right,
like,
and I fully support you, Representative Tam,
sorry,
with that question. Yeah, correct. I fully support what you're saying, and I actually identified that error. The bill as written has a couple of flaws, and one of the flaws is that I believe you need to also remove C. So there's C, which is a box to select directors that are present at the meeting. That needs to be stricken. And the way it's worded, I was concerned about that not being able to fund the proxy solicitation. So I don't know if there's another section, I have to go back and look within the statute that covers that. But if not, that needs to be reworded, because you do need to get a quorum. So you still should have an ability for a proxy solicitation by individuals and members of the association. Anybody, fair and equitable, not a group, but each person as an individual or even a board member, but not as a group. And the funding needs to be there to allow that. But we have other bills that are out there, HB 176 and the companion SB 1202, and those actually address these concerns.
And that doesn't really answer my question. My question is, don't you see this bill as limiting options for our condominium owners? And would you agree with that assessment, that it's limiting?
No,
options?
I see it as limiting the power and control by these board members and these directors. This is exactly what's happened to me the last 2 years and to other owners that were trying to challenge or run for election. It's a story I'm very well familiar with speaking to many owners and people across the country. So it's a thing. It's going on. It's prevalent. It needs to stop. This is an election for directors. When you have an election for directors of a corporation, you're voting for those directors. And it should be, as I said, an election in the state. You don't give your proxy to someone to vote for you. That would be illegal. You go vote for yourself or whoever you want to vote for. We vote for you, the legislators, and we vote for the governor.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Members, are there any other questions? If not, we'll be moving on to HB 646, relating to cemeteries, repeals exemption granted to churches by Act 22, Session Laws of Hawaii 2020, relating to bonding requirements and fee requirements for licenses, renewals, and reinstatements of licenses applicable to cemeteries and funeral trusts. Clarifies that the Director of Commerce and Consumer Affairs shall exempt any cemetery authority from the bonding requirements and the fee requirements for a license, renewal, and reinstatement upon proof satisfactory to the Director that the cemetery authority does not sell for financial profit, effective retroactively to September 15, 2020. First to testify, we have Chelsea Fukunaga from the DCCA.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Chelsea Fukunaga, Executive Officer of the Cemetery and Pre-Need Funeral Authority Program. The department will stand on its written testimony offering comments. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Brian Yee or James Page from the Attorney General's Office.
Afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. James Page from the Attorney General's Office. Through our comments, we're just recommending that the retroactive date be removed, as that could lead to litigation. So we would recommend you change it to, upon a future date or anything. That's all the comments we have.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Lisa Shorba. Not here. Okay. Members, we have numerous written testimony in opposition with 2 written testimony with comments. Are there any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and testify.
I'm one of the ones who submitted the testimony in opposition. May I speak?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair. My name is Monsignor Gary Secor. I'm the Vicar General of the Roman Catholic Church in the state of Hawaii. And we stand in opposition to this bill. We have been very grateful that last year the legislature chose to pass a bill and the governor signed an act into a law that allowed us to properly and reverently inter the remains, the cremated remains of our members, not just our church, but other churches as well in Kalambari. We've begun that process already, and there's a strong interest among our faithful in having the opportunity to have their loved ones' remains interred at the church that they identify with in a proper place in a columbarium. And so that's what we've begun to enact, and there's strong interest in this in our church. And so to pass this bill, which would prevent this from happening anymore, would be an extreme hardship for us, and in a sense make it more difficult for us to practice our faith. And it's a strong tenet of our faith that the remains be interred properly, and that's what we would like to continue to be able to do on behalf of our loved ones. I'm here if anybody have any questions they would want to ask as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, are there any questions? Oh, go ahead.
Reverend Mont Seymour, I just want to thank you for testifying. I'm also a pastor with the Foursquare Church, and I want to say thank you for promoting your religious views in this forum. We know that the First Amendment right gives us the liberty to...
Representative, sorry, is there a question?
Just no.
Oh, we'll have comments for when we have discussion. Yeah, thank you. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
thank you.
Members, any questions?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question in regards to your folks' implementation of developing columbariums. So the tax exemption applies to entities that are not, or the change would apply to entities that are not selling niches or internments for a profit. So you guys are opposed to this because you're selling it for a profit? Are you making money off of these sales?
We would have the potential of making money off of the sale. Actually, all the technical matters of how this is implemented, I'm not really completely versed in that. The person who helped us to craft this legislation, which was passed last year, unfortunately was not able to be here at the meeting today to properly answer your question. So I don't want to misrepresent what we're doing, so I'm kind of hesitant to directly answer your question because I don't have all the knowledge. I know that our main purpose in establishing this possibility was for our faithful to be able to inter the remains, if they chose, at a church of their choosing, and to do that in a proper way. And of course, there's costs involved in that, and so the costs have to be taken care of. Our main purpose in having this enacted was not to be a profit-making entity. Of course, we're not a profit-making entity. We're a 501c3, and so we don't. We're not in the business of making money for that purpose. That's not why we enacted this bill. Had this bill enacted. That's all.
Well, my interpretation is it still gives you the ability, as long as you're not selling your niches or internments for more than the cost. So, thank you for that.
I'm sorry, I can't answer you more directly, Representative.
Okay. So can, Chair, I ask DCCA to come up? So DCCA? So the rules for the tax exemption was changed last year on who would qualify.
Are you speaking towards who was exempted from?
Yeah, who was exempted from
So-
licensing and.
Yeah, so
right,
it
permits.
exempts religious churches and nonprofits.
Okay, so previous to last year, are you aware of churches that had niches or columbariums
So
previously that qualified as not having required licensing because they did not make a profit from these?
So in, I believe it was 1967, that's when the cemetery law came into effect. I guess entities, like it would have been like churches or nonprofits, if they, I have the wording actually, let me find it. So since 1968, the exempt cemetery authorities were not regulated and were treated as exempt from HRS Chapter 441 requirements. And what, let's see, when it was passed, this act, it codified that practice and it clarified for churches and nonprofits at that time. So there were exempt entities.
And so since then, there are private businesses that do have columbariums or niches that have to be permitted or licensed.
If they're selling for profit. So I should caveat what the previous statement. So they were exempt at that time in 1967, provided that they didn't sell for profit, basically.
So this is still just going back to that whole.
So it's codifying that practice, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? If not, we'll be taking a short recess for decision making. Reconvening the House Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce. We'll be going into voting, starting with HB 498. This is relating to counties. We'll just be adding a defective date of June 30th, 3000. Members, are there any discussions, comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, Chair Nakashima, excused. Vice Chair Sayama,
Aye.
Representative Amato. Oh, excused. Representative Belatti, excused. Representative Hashem, excused. Representative Hussey Burdick.
Aye.
Representative Gates.
Aye.
Representative Lowen.
Aye.
Representative Onishi votes aye. Representative Tam.
Aye.
Representative Pirate.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, we have HB 525 relating to the Uniform Commercial Code. We'll be including technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, and adding a defective date of June 30th, 3000. Members, are there any discussions, comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Yes, okay. Noting the absence of Representative Nakashima, Mato, Belatti, and Hashem, any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, we'll be moving on to HB 75 relating to motor vehicle insurance. First, we'll be blanking out the dollar amount for new insurance minimums for years 2026 and 2027. I do believe that there needs to be some changes, as Hawaii hasn't changed their insurance minimums for quite some time, but I think that amount can be negotiated and discussed further. Second, we'll have, for clarity, replacing the language in Section 3 with languages that states, this act applies to motor vehicle insurance policies entered into, amended, or renewed on or after the effective date of this act. We'll also be incorporating the recommendations from the Hawaii Insurers Council's testimony, reading, the insurance commissioners shall issue a memo to solicit rate filings from motor vehicle insurers to reflect amendments to Section 431-10C-301, subsection B 1A, and Section 431-10C-301, subsection B 2A, no later than July 1st, 2023. Rate filings shall be due no later than December 1st, 2023, and the relevant rate changes shall be effective for new and renewal policies on or after July 1st, 2024. The insurance commissioner shall furthermore issue a memo to solicit rate filings from motor vehicle insurers to reflect amendments to Section 431-10C-301B1B and Section 431-10C-301 subsection B2B no later than January 1st, 2026. Rate filings shall be due no later than July 1st, 2026, and the relevant rate changes shall be effective for new and renewal policies on or after January 1st, 2027. After that, we'll be adding a defective date of June 30th, 3000. Members, any discussions or comments?
Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to say for the record that I am concerned that this bill may have the potential of increasing the number of people that will decide not to get insurance, and therefore affecting maybe the costs to get coverage for uninsured motorists. So at this point, I'm going to be voting with reservations.
Thank you. Any other discussions or comments from members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, HB 75, the recommendation is passed with amendments. Noting the absence of Representatives Nakashima, Amato, Belatti, and Hashem. Any members voting with reservations?
Reservations.
Tam. Lowen. That all? Okay, any no votes?
No.
Okay.
Pure votes no.
I'm sorry?
Pure votes no. Pure votes no.
Oh, no? Oh, sorry. Okay, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, HB 76 relating to motor vehicle insurance. We'll be deferring this measure and using HB 75 as the vehicle to address insurance minimums. Next, we have, members, any discussions or comments about HB 76? If not, we'll be moving on to HB 638 relating to insurance. For clarity, we'll be replacing language on page 3, lines 4 to 7 to read, "The charges and any subsequent increase in charges for chiropractic treatment under this section shall be tied to the charges permissible under the Workers' Compensation Supplemental Medical Fee Schedule." We'll also be defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, are there any discussions, comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Yes, HB 638, the recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Nakashima, Amato, Belatti, and Hashem. Any members voting with reservations?
Reservations.
Floin? Anyone else? Okay, any no votes? Okay, Chair, your recommendation passes.
Thank you. Next, we'll be moving on to HB 537. This is relating to electronic smoking devices. For clarity, we'll be inserting the definitions of entity, person, and use from Chapter 245 HRS into Section 1 on page 2 and 3. Second, we'll be including e-liquid as a category for retailers and wholesalers subject to the registration requirements under Chapter 28. Third, we'll be blanking out the excise tax percentage for which the wholesaler or dealer must pay. Currently, it's written as 70%, but I think there needs to be some discussion as to this percentage rate for e-cigarettes relative to the tobacco products currently taxed at 70%. Next, we have, fourth, we replace language on page 14, line 16 to 17 to read, "This act shall take effect on January 1st, 3000. And finally, we have technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, are there any discussions or comments? Go ahead.
I support HB 537, but I just will vote with reservations, believing that HB 1070 should be furthered.
Thank you. Members, are there any other comments or discussions? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
HB 537, recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Nakashima, Amato, Belatti, and Hashem, and with reservations for Representative Pyrick. Any others voting with reservations? Any no votes? Chair, your recommendation's adopted.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to HB 647. This is relating to alcohol. We'll be defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, are there any discussions or comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, HB 647, recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Nakashima, Amato, Belatti, and Hashem. Any members voting with reservations? Any no votes? Chair, your recommendation's adopted.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to HB 660. This is relating to the issuance of special purpose revenue bonds for non-for-profit corporations that provide healthcare facilities to the general public. We'll be defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, are there any discussions or comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, HB 660, the recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Nakashima, Amato, Belatti, and Hashem. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation's adopted.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to HB 642. This is relating to consumer protection. We'll be changing the word chapter on page 6, line 18 to part. We'll also be providing technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, and providing a defective date of June 30th, 3000. Members, are there any discussions or comments? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
HB 642, recommendation is passed with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Nakashima, Amato, Belatti, and Hashem. Any members voting with reservations? Any no votes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to HB 643 relating to deceptive trade practices. For clarity, we'll be changing commodity on page 1, line 16 to goods and adding a defective date of June 30th, 3000. Members, are there any discussions or comments? Go ahead.
With the desire to open the market and not regulate trade, I'll be voting no.
Okay, no vote. Any other members? Okay, thank you. Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, HB 643, the recommendation is passed with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Nakashima, Amato, Belatti, and Hashem, and a no vote for Representative Pyrek. Any other no votes? Any members voting with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to HB 351. This is relating to tax credits. I'd like to incorporate the recommendations from DCCA first, noted in their testimony. First, that only one tax credit may be claimed per unit. Second, that the credit may be claimed in the taxable year in which the increase in fee was imposed and paid. Third, that the amount of the credit claimed shall not exceed the amount by which the maintenance fee was increased or the amount actually paid by the taxpayer. And fourth, providing a definition for automatic fire sprinkler or alternative fire prevention and fire safety systems. I'd like to continue to engage with DCCA as to discuss what the appropriate agency to certify these credits would be. But for now, I would like to also add a defective date of June 30th, 3000. And in the committee report, I'd like to note that this tax credit be applied not only to the maintenance fee, but to special assessments, and kind of have a further discussion on that with the next committee chair. Okay, members, any discussion, comments?
Chair?
Yes.
You know, I do have some concerns that this tax credit is for an ordinance that was passed by the city and county of Honolulu without any funding for this mandate. And, you know, I am concerned that we are funding a county initiative through state revenue. So, you know, with that, I am going to be voting with reservations on this bill.
Thank you. Other members for discussion? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, HB 351, recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Nakashima, Nakashima, Amato, Belatti, and Hashem, and with reservations for Representative Onishi. Any other members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Okay, Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to HB 377 relating to condominium proxy voting. Actually, members, I'd like to defer this measure. I think there was some good discussion provided in the testimony, but I don't think this is something that is ready for a vote yet. I think there are members in this committee who would like to speak upon this issue. Representative Tam.
Thank you, Chair, for your work on this measure. You know, this measure has the community split, and as someone who represents a district that is majority of condominiums, I welcome the opportunity to work on this measure for with you further. You know, and I don't want to delegitimize the concerns that were raised by several of the condo owners. So this is a matter that's important to me. I think that, you know, there is a proper way to move forward on this, but I welcome the opportunity to work with you, and I thank you so much for it.
Thank you, Rep. Tam. Rep. Lowen.
Thank you. I just hope all the condo and homeowners associations and management companies consider implementing virtual meetings, because that could solve a lot of these problems, not require legislation. More participation would be facilitated, and more participation would mean more oversight, and, better representation. So that is, hopefully we'll see more of that in the future. We definitely know it's possible.
Thank you. Members, are there other comments or discussions? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote. Oh, I'm sorry, we're deferring the measure. No vote. Okay, we'll be moving on to HB 646. Members, after listening to the testimony and reading the testimony, I'd like to defer this measure. I think there's some work to be done in the interim, and to work with the introducers of this measure and the stakeholders to address some of the financial concerns. And I'd like to also work with DCCA to make sure that there is proper oversight for this program and exemption. Members, are there any discussions or comments?
Thank you for the deferral.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for this hearing. This committee is adjourned.